I'm Margaret Story. I was 59 years old when a man 20 years younger looked at me as if I were the only woman in the world, and that look completely destroyed everything I had built in 32 years of marriage. But before you judge me, let me tell you how I got here. Because nothing that happened was planned, and I swear I never imagined I would be capable of something like this. My name is Margaret, I'm 59 years old, and I live in Portland, Oregon, in a large, silent house that hasn't felt like a home for a long time. I've been married to Richard for 3 decades. We have 2 adult children, Amanda, who is 30, and Michael, who is 27, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a perfectly ordinary life. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't unhappy either. I simply existed, you know? Like those plants you water out of obligation, but that never truly bloom. I was that plant. Richard was always a good provider. He worked as an accountant at a respectable firm, came home at 7 in the evening, had dinner while watching the news, and then went upstairs to his office where he spent 3 more hours working. On weekends, he played golf with friends. Our routine was so predictable that I could anticipate every word, every gesture, every silence. And the silences? Oh, the silences were the worst of all. It had been almost 8 years since Richard had really touched me. I'm not just talking about physical intimacy, although that had also ended long ago. I'm talking about a simple touch, a caress on the face, a spontaneous hug, holding my hand while we watched TV. Nothing. I had become invisible in my own home. Gradually, I began to believe that at 59 years old, my life as a woman had simply ended. And if you're enjoying this story and want to hear more real accounts like this, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. These stories need to be told, and your subscription helps me continue sharing. Then, in March of this year, everything changed. The company where Richard worked went through a restructuring and hired a new financial analyst to work directly with him. His name was David. He was 38 years old, divorced, and on the day Richard brought him home for dinner, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long it scared me. I felt seen. David had brown eyes that really looked at you when he talked to you. Not that vague, distracted look I was used to, but a present, attentive, interested look. When he greeted me that night, he held my hand for 2 seconds longer than necessary, and I felt an electric current run up my arm. I thought I was going crazy. During dinner, Richard talked about work the whole time. As always, but David made a point of including me in the conversation. He asked about my life, my interests, my work as a volunteer librarian. When I mentioned that I loved French literature, his eyes lit up, and he spent 20 minutes talking to me about Proust and Flaubert, while Richard checked his phone without even noticing what we were discussing. That night, after David left, I looked in my bedroom mirror and really saw myself for the first time in years. I had gray hair, yes, and wrinkles around my eyes, but I also had blue eyes that were still bright, a smile I had forgotten I had, and a posture that wasn't as hunched as I imagined. Could I still be a woman? Could someone see me that way? The following weeks were a delicious and confusing torture. David started showing up at our house more often. Richard would invite him to dinners, to watch games, and every time he arrived, my heart would race in a way that embarrassed me. I was 59 years old, married, a mother, a grandmother, to a 2-year-old granddaughter. What was happening to me? And if you're identifying with this story, or know someone who has been through something similar, leave your comment below and subscribe to the channel to follow how this situation unfolds. David started sending me messages. At first they were innocent, thanking me for the dinners, commenting on the books we discussed. But then the messages became more personal. He told me about his difficult divorce, about how lonely he felt in Portland, about how he admired my intelligence and sensitivity. And I, who hadn't received a genuine compliment in years, drank in every word like water in the desert. I knew it was wrong. God, I knew. Every night I prayed for strength to stop it. But in the morning, when I saw a new message from him on my phone, all that regret evaporated. He made me feel young again, desired, interesting. He made me feel alive. In May, Richard had to travel to a conference in Chicago for 5 days. The night before the trip, David sent me a message. Would you like to have coffee with me tomorrow? I know a quiet place downtown. My finger froze over the reply button for 10 minutes. I knew that if I said yes, I would be crossing a line from which there was no return. But I replied, Yes, I'd love to. That coffee turned into 4 hours of conversation at a small cafe in Northwest Portland. We sat in a secluded corner, and David told me about his childhood in Colorado, about his dreams of writing a novel someday, about how out of place he felt in corporate meetings because his soul was that of an artist. And I opened up in a way I hadn't opened up in decades. I told him about how invisible I felt, about how my marriage had become a silent coexistence, about how I was afraid that my life would end without having really lived. When he held my hand on the table, I didn't pull away. When he said I was the most fascinating woman he had met in years, my eyes filled with tears. And when he suggested we go somewhere more private, I said yes, even knowing I was about to commit the biggest mistake of my life. Or maybe it wasn't a mistake. I honestly didn't know anymore. Please, if you're following this story and want to know what happens next, subscribe to the channel now. This account is going to places you can't imagine, and I need your support to continue sharing. We went to his apartment, a small but cozy studio in the Pearl District. When the door closed behind us, I froze. What was I doing? I was a 59-year-old woman, married, a mother. But then David approached, put his hands on my face with a gentleness that made me tremble, and said, "You're beautiful, Margaret. So beautiful." And in that moment, all my defenses crumbled. He kissed me slowly, with a tenderness I had forgotten existed. His hands trembled when they touched my face, my neck, my shoulders. I won't describe what happened next because it's too intimate, but I can say that for the first time in almost a decade, I felt like a complete woman. I cried afterward, not from regret, but from relief. My body was still alive. I was still alive. But the guilt came soon after, like a giant wave pulling you to the bottom of the sea. On the way home, I drove with my hands shaking so much I had to stop twice. What had I done? How could I betray Richard like that? It didn't matter that our marriage had been dead for years. It didn't matter that he barely noticed me. I had broken a sacred vow. When Richard returned from Chicago 3 days later, I tried to act normally, but I felt like my guilt was written on my forehead. Every time he looked at me, I was sure he knew. But Richard continued exactly as he had always been. Distant, polite, indifferent. And that, somehow, hurt even more. David and I continued meeting. I know this shocks you, and it shocks me too, but I couldn't stop. We would see each other 2, sometimes 3 times a week, always when Richard was at work. It wasn't just about sex, although that part was incredibly important to me after so long without being touched. It was about real conversations, about laughing again, about feeling valued and desired. And now, a quick pause to ask you something. If you're following this story and want to be part of this community of people who share real accounts, click subscribe. Your stories are important too, and I want to hear them in the comments. But of course, lies have short legs, and in July, everything started to fall apart. Amanda, my daughter, showed up at the house unexpectedly on a Thursday afternoon, just when I should have been returning from David's apartment. She found my delay strange, my agitation, my poorly crafted excuse about having gone to the supermarket without bags. I saw the suspicion in her eyes, and that terrified me. Worse still, David started getting more intense. He said he was falling in love with me, that he wanted me to leave Richard, that he wanted to build a life with me. And me? I was terrified. Leave a 32-year marriage at 59 for a man 20 years younger. How could I do that to my children, my grandchildren, my entire family? But at the same time, the idea of returning to that life of invisibility and loneliness suffocated me. In August, what I feared most happened. Richard found a message from David on my phone. I had been careless, left my phone unlocked while I showered. When I came out of the bathroom, Richard was sitting on the bed, my phone in his hand, his face completely white. What followed was the worst night of my life. Richard didn't yell, didn't curse at me, didn't break anything. He just looked at me with a mixture of shock, pain, and indifference, as if deep down he wasn't surprised, as if deep down I didn't matter that much. And that hurt more than any shouting could have hurt. He asked me how long, and I told him everything. He asked me why, And I tried to explain about feeling invisible, about the years without affection, without touch, without connection. He was silent for a long time and then said, "So it's my fault?" And I didn't know what to answer, because it wasn't his fault. But it also was, you know? Marriage is a two-way street, and we both let it die a long time ago. Richard demanded that I stop seeing David immediately. He said that if I wanted to try to save our marriage, it had to end right then. And I agreed, because it seemed like the right thing to do. I sent David a message explaining everything, and he was devastated. He begged me not to give up on what we had, said he loved me, that he had never felt this way about anyone. If you're rooting for a specific outcome or have an opinion about this situation, please share in the comments and subscribe to the channel. These conversations are important, and I want to hear what you think. I spent the next 2 weeks trying to rebuild something with Richard. We went to couples therapy, started having dinner together without TV, tried to really talk. But it was forced, mechanical, like trying to revive something that had been dead for a long time. And I missed David every second. Missed the conversations, the laughter, feeling desired. Then, 3 weeks ago, Amanda found out everything. I don't know how, maybe Richard told her. Maybe she overheard one of our therapy sessions. She showed up at the house one afternoon without warning and confronted me in the living room. The words she said to me still echo in my head every night. "How could you, Mom? How could you betray Dad like that? He gave you everything, a house, a family, stability, and you cheat on him with a man Michael's age. You're pathetic. Are you having a midlife crisis at 60? Is that it?" I tried to explain, tried to make her understand that it wasn't about age, it wasn't about a crisis, it was about loneliness, about not being seen, about wanting to feel that I was still alive. But she didn't want to listen. She said I had destroyed our family, that she could never look at me the same way again, that my granddaughter didn't need a grandmother who had no moral values. Those words broke me completely. Michael, my son, also found out and took his sister's side. He stopped calling me, stopped answering my messages. Suddenly, I wasn't just invisible to my husband, I was a pariah to my own children. And David? David keeps sending me messages saying he loves me, that he wants me to have the courage to start over. That age is just a number, that we deserve to be happy. Part of me wants to believe him. Part of me wants to leave everything and start a new life, even if it's scandalous, even if it's difficult. But another part of me is terrified at the idea of completely losing my family, of being judged by everyone, of regretting at 70 having left everything for a passion that might not last. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. I really need to know I'm not alone in this situation, and your subscription shows me that these stories matter. Richard and I still live in the same house, but he sleeps in the guest room. We're polite to each other, like two roommates who barely know each other. He hasn't mentioned divorce again, but he hasn't mentioned forgiveness either. We're in a kind of limbo, and I don't know how long I can live like this. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and stare at the ceiling, wondering how I got here. I used to be a good person, a good wife, a good mother. When did it all fall apart? When did I become this person who cheats, who lies, who hurts the people she loves? But then I remember that feeling of being alive again, of being touched with desire, of having someone who really listens to me and cares what I think. And I wonder, is that so wrong? Don't I have the right to want that too? Why are women my age expected to simply accept invisibility, to live the rest of their lives being grateful for what they have, even when what they have is an empty existence? I'm not saying what I did was right. I'm not making excuses for the betrayal. But I'm saying the situation is more complicated than it seems from the outside. Marriage isn't black and white. Loneliness within a marriage is real, and the desire to be loved and desired doesn't disappear just because you're over 50. David called me last night. He said he got a job offer in Seattle and he's going to accept it. He said he wants me to go with him, that we can start from scratch in a new city where nobody knows us, where nobody judges us. That there we can just be Margaret and David, two adults who love each other and want to build something together. If you're still here, thank you for listening without judgment. Please subscribe to the channel and leave your comment about what you would do in this situation. I really need different perspectives. I have 1 week to give him an answer. 1 week to decide whether I'm going to stay in this dead but respectable marriage, or if I'm going to risk a new life with a man who might really love me, but who might also get tired of me in a few years when I'm 65 and he's 44. Richard also gave me an ultimatum yesterday. He said that if I want to save our marriage, he's willing to really try, but I need to commit 100%. No contact with David, no looking back, no regrets. He wants us to sell the house, move to a smaller place, start a new phase together, maybe even travel around the country we always dreamed of seeing. And you know what's craziest? I don't know what I want. Some days I wake up absolutely certain I'm going to choose David. The passion, the novelty, the feeling of being alive. Other days I wake up missing my family, my grandchildren, the stability. And I think I can learn to be happy with Richard if we really try. Amanda called me the day before yesterday, crying. She said she's confused, that she's angry with me but also feels sorry for me, that she doesn't know how to process all this. She asked if I really love David or if it was just an affair of a desperate woman. And I was honest with her. I don't know. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's just the excitement of being desired again. But I also know that what I felt with David was more intense than anything I felt in the last 20 years of my marriage. What would you do in my place? At 59 years old, with a 3-decade marriage behind you, adult children who judge you, a reputation to lose, but also with the chance to start over, to feel passion again, to live instead of just existing? Some people will call me selfish. They'll say that women my age should be grateful for what they have, that they should accept that romance and passion are things for young people. They'll say I'm being ridiculous, that David will leave me as soon as someone younger comes along, that I'm destroying my family for nothing. But other people might understand. Maybe they understand what it's like to live years feeling invisible, undesired, unloved. Maybe they understand that marriages can die long before they officially end. Maybe they understand that women in their 50s, 60s, 70s are still women, with desires, needs, dreams. I have 5 days to make this decision. 5 days to choose between security and passion, between family and romantic love, between the respectable woman I've always been and the woman I discovered I can be. Last night I had a dream. I was old, in my 80s, sitting alone in a dark room, and I was asking myself, did I live? Did I really live? Or did I just exist, doing what was expected of me, being safe, being respectable, but never really feeling anything? I woke up in panic, my heart racing, because I realized that's the real question, isn't it? At the end of life, what will matter more, having been respectable or having been happy, having kept up appearances or having lived authentically, having avoided hurting people or having been true to what you really felt? I don't have the answer yet, and maybe you don't either. But I'd like you to think about this. If you were in my place, what would you choose? And more importantly, what do you hope I choose? Leave your answer in the comments. Tell me if I'm a brave woman for following my heart or a fool destroying her life. Tell me if David is my chance for happiness or just a mistake I'll regret. Tell me if Richard deserves a second chance or if our marriage died a long time ago. And please, subscribe to the channel. Because in a week, I'm coming back here to tell you what my decision was. I'll tell you if I chose Seattle with David or Portland with Richard. I'll tell you if my children forgave me or if I lost my family forever. I'll tell you if at 60 I'm starting a new life or trying to save the old one. The only thing I know for sure right now is that there's no right choice. Whatever decision I make will hurt someone, will cost something. The question is, what am I willing to pay for what I want? And what do I really want? So I ask you again, what would you do in my place? At 59 years old, when a hand finally reaches out to you and reminds you that you still have skin, still have a heart, are still alive? Do you hold that hand and leave? Or do you let it go and stay where you are, hoping that maybe someday things will get better? 5 days, 120 hours, 7,200 minutes to decide the rest of my life. The clock is ticking, and I still don't know what to do. End of part 1. Final call. This is my story so far. Please comment what you think, what you would do, whether you judge me or understand me. Subscribe to the channel to find out what decision I made and how it all ended. Because this isn't over. This story is just beginning, and I need to know I'm not alone in this. Thank you for listening to me until next week. If I'm still here.